Have you been thinking about getting a 70 to 200mm 2.8 but were put off by the price? Then I might think I have a real alternative for you here. If it doesn't necessarily have to be a 200mm, then the Tamron 70 to 180mm 2.8 might be your new lens. You can of course find it in my shop in the link in the video description below. It costs just under 1000 bucks, weighs 810 grams, and apart from a lock switch, it only has a zoom ring and a focus ring. The filters are also much cheaper at 67mm and it extends. The body is also weatherproof. We tested the lens on the Sony Alpha 7 IV. We were unable to detect any chromatic aberrations in Adobe Lightroom. You can see for yourself with the playback images. Vignetting was a different story. This can be quite pronounced with a 2.8 aperture. However, this can also be corrected very easily in Adobe Lightroom using the automatic correction. In terms of sharpness, we were not particularly surprised that the lens is extremely sharp, whether at 2.8 or 5.6. The sharpness is definitely impressive. I can recommend that you familiarize yourself with the aperture, ISO and shutter speed, preferably with my great tutorial Learning Photography for Beginner, so that you can take sharp pictures in every situation. The autofocus was fast, just like a Sony lens, whether eye tracking or in video mode. We were very satisfied, even in low light, for example for the church at a wedding. This lens did a really good job. That's why we can say that this lens is a real blessing for all portrait photographers out there, because we realized that this lens is just amazing. The low weight, the continuous aperture of 2.8 in combination with the fast autofocus and bokeh makes this lens a perfect companion for your next shooting. If you want to take photos of detail, the shortest focusing distance is just 27 centimeters, as long as you focus manually. If you use the autofocus, the lens focuses over the entire zoom range at 85 centimeters. Although it's not a macro lens, it still gives you the chance to capture beautiful details without being 2 meters away. You won't find a switch for the image stabilizer on this lens. This only works via the sensor of my camera. There's actually a version on the market with an image stabilizer. Look out for the abbreviation VC. This stands for vibration compensation. This lens is a little bit more expensive at about 1400 bucks, but it will help you for slower shutter speeds and filming. This version worked for us here. The internal image stabilizer of the Sony Alpha 7 IV also did its best at slower shutter speeds. A 70 to 180mm lens can never hurt. You can save a lot of money, weight and space. Sure, you can also thread yourself to a 70 to 200mm f4, but it's not a 2.8 aperture. For cities, holidays, weddings and portraits, a 70 to 180mm is perfect adequate. As a rule, I rarely shoot or film with a 70 to 200mm at 200mm and could almost say that the 180mm is perfect adequate. Of course, if money and weight are not an issue, then thread yourself with a 70 to 200mm. But let me tell you that you have also a really cheap alternative here. We also found this in video mode. Sure, there are also more steady shots with the VC version in the new edition, but for press, documentaries and traveling, this is a lens which you can take very beautiful and steady shots. Last but not least, the beautiful bokeh. The 2.8 aperture ensures a very nice background blur, and that completely from a 70 to 180mm. Ideal for video, portraits, details, low light and weddings. Our conclusion on the Tamron 70 to 180mm is, of course, very positive. Very light, compact, just under 1000 bucks, fast and precise autofocus, sharp images. Why spend $2,500 and more if you don't necessarily need a 200mm lens, but don't want to do it with a 2.8 aperture? At 810 grams, you won't be dropping yourself around and you'll be ready for the next wedding. Now I'm really looking forward for your feedback. If you like the short review, please feel free to subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up and take a closer look at this lens via the link in the video description. Thank you very much and see you next time. Tschüss.